When did you last try to explain something and find the words just gave out on you? Not because you weren't articulate, not because you hadn't thought it through, but because the thing itself seemed to be standing just outside of the reach of language, and every sentence you built toward it came up a little short. Maybe it was trying to describe what it felt like when your child was born, or the moment you knew you were in love, or the quality of a light on a specific morning that meant something to you, but would have sounded ridiculous if you tried to explain it to anyone else. There are things that are real, more real sometimes than most of the things that we can easily name, that language just can't hold. Verse 14 is about one of those things. Actually, it's about the deepest one. Let's read it. Look, and it can't be seen. Listen, and it can't be heard. Reach, and it can't be grasped. Above isn't bright. Below isn't dark. Seamless, unnameable, it returns to the realm of nothing. Form that includes forms. Image without an image. Subtle beyond all conception. Approach it, and there is no beginning. Follow it, and there is no end. You can't know it, but you can be it, at ease in your own life. Just realize where you come from. This is the essence of wisdom. Let's start with the beginning, because I think Lao Tzu is doing something very deliberate with how he opens the verse. Look, and it can't be seen. Listen, and it can't be heard. Reach, and it can't be grasped. 3 lines, 3 senses. 3 of the fundamental ways human beings try to take hold of the world. And Lao Tzu is saying, none of these will work here. Not because the Tao is hiding from you, not because it's being coy, but because it exists in a different register entirely. It's not a thing among other things, waiting on a shelf to be examined. It is the ground those things sit on. You can't see the thing that makes seeing possible. Think about it this way. Your eye can look at almost anything. It can take in a sunset, a spreadsheet, the face of someone you love, but it cannot look at itself looking. It cannot turn around and observe its own act of observation. The Tao is just like that. It's not out there to be examined. It's the examining itself. And when you realize that, something subtle shifts, because you start to understand that the reason you can't find the Tao by looking for it isn't that you're failing. It's that the seeker and the sought are the same thing. Then Lao Tzu does something almost playful. Above isn't bright, below isn't dark. He's dismantling the most basic categories we have: up and down, light and dark. These are the first ways children learn to organize things. Things are above or below, bright or dim, here or there. And he's saying these coordinates don't apply, which should be disorienting, but I find it strangely comforting, because it means the Tao isn't up, which means you don't have to climb to reach it. It isn't bright, which means you don't have to be enlightened in the way we usually use that word to encounter it. It isn't somewhere elevated and reserved for people who have put in the work. It's also not below. It's not hidden in some basement level of reality. It's seamless, unnameable. It returns to the realm of nothing. We spend so much time looking for the seams in things, the place where the useful ends and the useless begins, where the sacred breaks off from the ordinary, where I end and you begin, where the past becomes the present. We love edges. We love definitions and knowing where we stand in relation to everything else. But the Tao just keeps dissolving the boundaries before we can draw them, which is not absence. We talked about this in verse 4. The nothing the Tao returns to isn't empty the way an abandoned house is empty. It's empty the way a spring is empty, not depleted, but inexhaustibly open, full of potential that hasn't taken form yet. Here's a line I've been sitting with for days. Form that includes all forms. Image without an image. There's a concept in art, negative space. This is the space around and between the subjects of an image. Most people, when they look at a painting or a photograph, track the subjects, the figures, the objects. They follow the edges of things. But trained artists learn to see the negative space too, to look at the air between the branches, the shadow at the base of a bowl, or the gap between two people in a photograph. And when you learn to see that way, something strange happens. The negative space starts to feel as real as the positive space, sometimes more real. Sometimes the most important part of the composition turns out to be the part no one was looking at. Now we come to the line that I think is the whole verse. You can't know it, but you can be it. In most traditions we inherit in the West, and in a lot of the cultural air we breathe without even quite knowing it, knowing and being are on the same ladder. The more you know, the more fully you become. If you get the right education or the right information, the right therapy or practice, these are how you accumulate the way toward a more complete version of yourself. Lao Tzu is cutting that ladder in half. You can't think your way through the Tao. You can't read enough books or listen enough to some guy talk about it. You can't develop a model of it and then arrive. The concepts will always be just the map, never the territory. And this particular territory is the kind that a map actively misrepresents, because the act of mapping it makes it look like a place you could arrive from somewhere else, but you're already there. That's the other half of the sentence. You can be it. Not eventually, not after sufficient preparation. The being is already happening. And I want to be clear here, because I know some of this sounds like spiritual bypass, like a way of saying nothing matters, don't bother trying, you're already enlightened, so you might as well just sit on the couch. That's not what Lao Tzu means. He's not talking about effort being useless. He's talking about the difference between knowing a thing and being it. You can know everything there is to know about swimming. Physics, the biometrics, every technique ever developed, and still drown. Because a swimmer requires something else, something that only comes through the water, something that has to be inhabited, not just understood. Because you can't step into it the way you step into a pool. You're already in it right now. You've always been in it. The question isn't how to enter. It's whether you're going to spend your whole life on the mental equivalent of reading swimming manuals from the dry side of the pool. The verse continues, and I love the turn it makes here. At ease in your own life. That phrase could be its own verse. Not at ease in some ideal life, not at ease once You've resolved the outstanding problems and arrived at circumstances you were trying to create. At ease in your own life right now, the one that you're actively living, the one with the particular texture that it has this morning with whatever is unfinished and uncertain. This is what being in the Tao looks like from the inside. It's not transcendence. It's not removal from ordinary life. Not a permanent state of bliss where nothing bothers you anymore. Just ease. The ease of something that belongs where it is. The ease of the river in its banks, or a tree that has put down deep roots and doesn't need to prove it belongs in the forest. Most of us are not particularly at ease. We're at ease in certain moments. When things are going well, when we've had a good conversation, when we're doing something we love and time disappears. But as a baseline condition, most of us treat everything as a destination, a reward, something to earn. But Lao Tzu is suggesting that ease isn't downstream of getting things right. It's downstream of knowing where you come from. Which brings us to the last line. Just realize where you come from. This is the essence of wisdom. Not where you're going, not what you're becoming, where you come from. In Zen, there's a question a teacher sometimes gives his students as a koan, one of those unanswerable riddles meant to exhaust the rational mind into different kind of state of openness. And the question is this: what was your face before your parents were born? It sounds like nonsense at first. Your parents had to exist for you to exist. There's no face before that. But the question isn't a logical puzzle. It's pointing at something before the story of you began, before your name, before the personality and the history of the accumulated set of things that you've been through and believe and worry about. What was it before that? It's the seamless, the unnameable source, the form that includes all forms, the image without an image. And the claim Lao Tzu is making is that that is where you came from, that you are at the deepest levels that, which means the wisdom isn't somewhere you haven't gotten to yet. It isn't a prize at the end of the path. It's the recognition of where you already are, of what you already are, underneath the accumulated noise of being a particular person with a particular life. That's a harder instruction than it sounds, because realizing where you come from isn't an intellectual exercise. You can't read a description of it and check a box. The mind keeps wanting to grab onto something, some concept or image, some feeling it can label and file. And every time it does, the Tao retreats from it. The point that Lao Tzu is making is that it's more like a softening than an arrival, less like getting an answer and more like releasing the question. So here's what I'm sitting with this week, and I'll leave it with you. We spend so much of our lives in the mode of the first three lines, looking harder, listening more carefully, researching further, as if the thing we need is just one more attempt away. But what if it isn't out there at all? What if the looking itself is the distance? You can't see the Tao, you can't hear it, and you can't grasp it, but you are it. Just realize where you come from. That's not the beginning of the path. That's the whole thing. Thank you for spending a few quiet minutes with me. This has been the Coffee Buzz Podcast.